Well, welcome this morning on this snowy, cold day. Can I do it alone is what I've labeled this. And whenever I shovel, I'm like, I can't do this alone. I need somebody else. Where's my kid? And, I have to rustle him up from the basement. Come on, help me shovel. I don't want to do it alone. And it kind of poses the question, can we do this life alone? Can we live alone? Can I get by on my own? I've come to know that this life, I got sober in 2006, and I realized that I need people. If I'm to surrender everything that I know how to stay alive, I need people to survive. And not in an unhealthy way, because I needed people before in my old life. I needed you to do this, and I needed you to take care of me, and I needed you to pay my bills, and I needed for ulterior motives. But in this new life, I've really come to really need people, and not in an unhealthy way. One of my mentors, he tells the story of how the Aboriginals made arrows, and it's super important. An arrow is an important thing because arrow equals dinner, food. And so they would handcraft these arrows, and they would have to be perfect and have a perfect tip and a flight. And then he goes on to say, they're handcrafted with such precision because it's their life. And he says any self-made arrow just remains a stick. And it always stuck with me. Edward Stark says, when the snow falls and the wind blows, the lone wolf dies, but the pack survives. And so you kind of get this picture is there's more to this journey than just me on my own. And what I want to really suggest is that we do need other people. Father, we just thank you for your word. We thank you for the place that we live in, that we can be in public and not be persecuted physically for having a Bible on a Sunday morning in public. So I thank you for that privilege. Holy Spirit, just come and teach us and be our teacher and our guide. And in Jesus' name, amen. So we're in Revelations. Yeah, we're going to dig into the room. It's cold outside. It's snowy. Sorry, that's a different message. But we're in Exodus 17, if you have your Bible. So this is kind of like the pretext. I have a pretext, and then there's the text. So we pick up this story of of Moses taking out the mass. It's the mass exodus. It's the Israelites leaving slavery in Egypt, and they're coming out, and they're on this journey to the promised land, and they're in the desert for 40 years, and we see this story. Moses leads them. Moses is their leader, but there's a fire of pillar at night and a cloud in the day, and God's leading them through the desert into the promised land. And we pick up this story where they've camped in Rephidim, and there's no water. And if you've been in a desert, which maybe somebody's been in a desert, I got out. We got on the tarmac of a desert, and we were on a trip. I think we were in Saudi Arabia. Were we in Saudi Arabia? Dubai. So isn't that Saudi Arabia? Okay. Anyway, and we grew up in Indonesia, so we're used to really hot weather. And so in this layover, we had a few hours, and they said you guys can either stay on the plane or get off the plane, go on the tarmac, and get into the airport. And as soon as I remember this vividly, as soon as we hit the air of the tarmac, we all turned around and said, "Okay, we'll wait inside." It was so hot, and so it was almost like walking into an oven. It was unbelievable. So, and they had rifles. I don't remember that part. I felt my life was threatened by the heat, not by the rifles. And so you get this picture of these people, hundreds of thousands of people, if not around 2 million, they say, is going through the desert, going through this heat, and they get to this camp, and there's no water. What starts to happen? Moses, why have you done this to us? Why have you brought us out of slavery into, this is even worse. What have you done to us? What are you doing to us? At least back there we had, the odd quail, we had the odd water buffalo, we had water. At least we had water. And what have you done bringing us out into this environment? This is not right. This is not. Are you even listening to God? Why would you do this to us? And Moses replied, why do you quarrel with me? Why do you put the Lord to the test? But the people were thirsty for water there and grumbled against Moses. They said, why did you bring us up out of Egypt and make us and our children and livestock die of thirst? Then Moses cried out to the Lord, what am I to do with these people? They're almost ready to stone me. So God says to Moses, see that rock over there? Give it a little taparoo, give it a hit, and problem solved. So God gives him these instructions to save the people from dying of thirst. And to me, it's such a great illustration. When we're in need, we cry out for a Savior. We cry out for something to come and save our lives. Hey, I'm in big trouble here. Things aren't going well. And God will always have a solution and always have an answer because he hears the cries of the needy. He hears, you might be somebody that has, struggled with addiction your whole life. And when you cry out for help, all of a sudden all the cards line up and you're in a rehab center that previously wouldn't accept you or had a 1-year waiting list. And the doors open up because you're at that rock bottom and you're shouting and screaming for help. And so God hears our cries and he's compassionate and slow to anger and will provide a way. It's kind of like my kids. I don't get mad. They complain all the time. If you have children, for some odd reason, one of their defaults is complaining. And it's like, do you not know the sacrifices I have made in my life for you, and you're complaining about not having food in the refrigerator? Just because you can't cook it, or because, I don't know if your children ever say that, open up the fridge, open up the pantry, there's nothing ever to eat here. Like, do your job and go grocery shopping. I don't know if you can relate to that, but I hear that in my household. And I don't freak out and get mad and kick them out of the house and you're just ungrateful. But no, as a parent, we kind of, okay, fine, I'll make you a sandwich. Okay, I don't do that, but my mom used to do that, and my dad used to make us noodle soup, ramen soup, and I think God's a lot like that, where he hears our grumbling and complaining, and he wants to provide. And then just a little transition, because the story again picks up in Numbers. And this is what Moses did. As a representative of God, this is what he does. He takes his staff from the Lord's presence, just as he had been commanded. And they went up to the rock. And he goes, listen, you rebels. I didn't look up what the Hebrew word for rebels was, but I don't know. To us, it's not super offensive. It's like, Nick, you rebel. Like, come on. Like, I don't know what rebel really meant back then, but I think it wasn't a good term. It was one of those maybe 4-letter words, but it's the R word, the rebel word. And Moses is upset. Moses is like, hey man, I'm sick of you guys complaining. We always will have a solution. We always have had a solution. We came out of slavery. What's wrong with you people? And he's a little ticked off at this, and he uses his staff, and he smacks the rock not once, but twice. And water gushed out, and the community and the livestock drank. But the Lord said to Moses, because you did not trust me enough to honor me as holy in the sight of the Israelites, you will not bring this community into the land that I've given them. And I find that amazing. And I always trip over that. Like, okay, what did Moses do that was so wrong? To offend God, to go, you've freed these people, you've sacrificed your life to bring these people out. Here they're complaining. Do what's best for them. Seek me and my will and pray for them and lead them. and for 40 years, and now you don't get to go into the promised land because you hit the rock twice. But what I sought God for an answer, and I said, Holy Spirit, why is this so serious of an offense? And I really truly believe that I heard the Spirit said, he misrepresented who I am. Because we've learned that God is compassionate, he's slow to anger, and he loves his children. But Moses, in his own anger, hit that rock twice and said, you guys don't get it. And he was the representation of God to those people. And I really believe he was disciplined for that. And I thought of a time that I was in prayer ministry, and I was going through stuff, and two people were praying for me, and they lead me to hear the voice of God, and they asked me to come up with a picture, ask God about a picture that I had in my youth or something that related to a burden that I was carrying. And I got this picture. We have a family portrait right when I was adopted. It's like the mass of rubies. And little newly adopted little Jon Ruby was sitting there with his bowl cut. Thank you, Nana, for the bowl cut. I rocked it hard all through the 70s and pretty much through the 80s and a lot of times in the 90s until I could afford my own haircut. Appreciate it. And so I remember this. I just remember this family photo and all the rubies. And I don't remember this, but I remember my mom saying, right as the camera went snap, took the picture, I fell off. I fell off my little stool. And I don't remember, but I'm seeing this picture and I fall off the stool, but I have this red backpack and it's full of books. And it's funny. Man, it's laughing around. It's funny because when we went to Indonesia into the mission field, we didn't have internet. We didn't have online theology books. So my dad brought the library. My dad had wooden boxes made and thousands of books were being shipped. There were, thousands. Nana would say thousands. Paul would say hundreds. We'll go with thousands of books are being shipped over. But there were so many, this is why I believe Nana, there were so many that little John and Steve, how old were we? 3 and 4. 3 and 4 backpacks, red backpacks, filled with theology books. Right? And we're running through the airport. I remember we're being late. I think I'm crying. I'm being dragged. There's books on my back. And I get to this picture, and I see myself fall over. And I laugh because I fell over because I had the backpack on. But I think I had a spiritual backpack. And I was asked, hey, little Jon Ruby, do you want to get off of this backpack? And I took that, I was able to ask God to remove that backpack because it was a burden that I shouldn't have been carrying and I didn't need to be carrying. And then my prayer minister said, what does God want to say to you? And I see the words, I've never been disappointed. And that's the true God. That's the compassionate God. That's the God that's slow to anger, that he's never been disappointed in me. And I've done some bad things. I've made some people disappointed in my life, but God has never been disappointed in me because he knew what I was going to do from the day I was born to the day that I died. And he died for me, and it's been forgiven and thrown away, and he's never been disappointed in me. And this is what Moses does. He's disappointed in the people. How do you disrespect me in front of God? And he hits the rock twice, he rebels. And then I thought about being a leader. I'm like, right? If you're a leader, you have a higher standard. Because you're representing the creator of the universe. You're representing a God that is compassionate and full of love and wants to give his children everything. It's kind of scary now to be a leader, eh? You know, if that was me, if I was Moses, I would have been like, yeah, I'm done. I quit. Like, I'm not even getting paid to do this. I'm off. Imagine that. Hey, you're doing all this for nothing. There's no salary, there's no paycheck, and you don't even get the reward at the end. So this leader, Moses, actually has that integrity of seeing the job done and carrying on no matter what. I also like Moses because he was called to lead these people as a leader. He was educated, but he was abandoned. He was a murderer. He was a shepherd, a doubter. He was angry and critical. And God still called him to bring his chosen people out of slavery into the promised land. And so maybe you're one of those people that don't have letters behind your name and dots, and you don't have this big, long educational transcript. Is that what we call it? Transcript? And resume. Maybe you're just an alcoholic. And you barely could keep jobs for 2 years. And then you get sober and it's like, wow, what am I going to do? That's the perfect slate for God to use you. Because you don't have any other junk that's in the way that he has to untrain you, detrain you, and he can just put you right into a leadership role. Because you're going to learn as you go. Vince Lombardi said, leaders aren't born, they're made. So imagine you come into this world. I'm a leader. I'm a born leader. I got these degrees. I got these certificates. And God's like, oh my goodness, we got like 5 years to reprogram you off of that stuff. So if you're a guy sitting in here and you're in a rehab center, you're the perfect leader because you're 5 years ahead of the guy with the names and the numbers and the dots behind him before his name. And I don't want to minimize education. Because I think some of that is valuable and good, and we need a mix of that. So we got Paul with letters and me with criminal record. It's a great mix. Leaders aren't born, they're made. All right, that was our pretext. There's some leadership stuff in there. There's a reflection of who God is, and this is our real text. This is where we wanted to go. Okay, and with that, we're out of time. We'll see you next week. Exodus 17, 8 to 16. And so many times we enter a battle after testing and a miracle. So we see the Israelite people in this time of testing and crying out to God, and we see this miracle, and now we go right into battle. It's interesting. I've reflected on that in my life. And when there's this time of testing, this time of need, and this time of crying out to God, and there's a miracle, and then boom, all of a sudden there's testing. And when I see guys in the treatment center, and I see guys just getting sober, all of a sudden it's like, whoa, that was crazy. I just got off the streets, and all of a sudden something crazy pops up, like a criminal charge or an ex-girlfriend or I don't know. You're probably all, what? Both. All 5 of those. and so all of a sudden you enter this battle. And this is what I want to get to, because can you do this battle on your own? The Amalekites. See, that's why you need an education. So you can pronounce words like that. The Amalekites. Thank you. Wrong syllable on the... The Amalekites came and attacked the Israelis at Rephidim. So they just had a drink of water, and now it's like, oh, grab your sword, let's go. It's go time. I won't get into who the Amalekites came from. Amalek, the son of Eliphaz, son of Esau. These were the guys that basically followed the Israelites through the desert. And they were these robbers. They were the hit and run guys. They were the guys that would see the weak and the lame and whatever livestock, and they would just grab it. And they would just take. They wouldn't go to the front of the pack. They would go right to the bottom and just grab what they could. They were in and out and really tormented the Israelites. You can read that in Deuteronomy 20:25. Moses said to Joshua, choose some of our men and go out and fight the Amalekites. Tomorrow I will stand on top of the hill with the staff of God in my hand. So the Amalekites were like, okay, we got these people trapped now. We're going to take them out once and for all, we hate these people. They're the chosen people of God. They're like in our ancestry, but we choose this path. And we could wipe them out now. They're drinking water. They're all huddled together. Let's get them. It's go time. And so Moses says to Joshua, all right, choose men. Let's get this going. Let's get this done with. And I'm going to stand on top of the hill with the staff of God in my hands. And so just a little explanation of this staff. When way back in the Old Testament, when Moses was asked to lead the people, he was chosen. He had like the walking stick of Moses. He had a walking stick. I guess it was a staff. I've never used a staff. I've used a walking stick. It's cool. You can beat things as you go through your little hiking. People use them. Now they use urban polling. It's kind of the same idea. He had a staff in his hand, and when he went to lead the people out of Egypt, that staff was instrumental in a symbol. And so when he had to go to the Pharaoh to say, let my people go, and all the plagues came, God told him to stretch out the staff. And then came the plagues. And then Pharaoh said, hey, I want nothing with these guys. That's a lot of frogs, that's some locusts, and now our firstborn children are dead. And they saw this staff of God as Moses reached it out. And it used to be an ordinary piece of wood that belonged to Moses, but the ownership changed, and it became the staff of God. It wasn't the staff of Moses anymore. It was the staff of God and a symbol of God's power. And the Red Sea was parted, and the rock gave out water, because that staff had changed ownerships. God takes your ordinary and makes it extraordinary. And you might be Jon Ruby or Nick Kirkish or Isabel Bilodeau, and you're just an ordinary person, but God can take that, and now you have a different ownership, and now you're extraordinary. Because everybody here, I've seen extraordinary stuff from most of you. There was we're missing some people today. But Deanna did a silent auction for her school, and I saw our community act in an extraordinary way. There was a person in their class that did a silent auction, and he lost a lot of money out of his own pocket. And so our community, I realized when we left this auction, we had Neil, being a sound guy, he took our sound equipment, all of it, and set it up so that there could be a hip-hop performer and a spoken word and all this stuff. And I saw Isabel, and she was looking after little Zach, and then a bunch of us bid on everything. So I got some stuff that I can't use. I bought 2 bottles of wine. Anybody want some wine? That'd be some good stocking stuffers. Some other home than mine. Actually, somebody's already claimed one of the bottles. But I saw we got all the baskets gone, and Isabel took care of the little Zach, and they were drawing all night. And Danny came and bought the other half of this, and it was like there was a bunch of extraordinary people here doing something for a single mom that has been fighting for her life with a 5-year-old. And they raised, I think it was $1,800. And it's like, is that a big deal in the grand scheme? It's a big deal, because there was extraordinary people that are under the ownership of God that made that happen. There might have been 10 people there, maybe. Right? It was poorly attended. Where were you guys? What? 50. Okay.
It was fun. It was really fun.
Where was I? So Joshua fought the Amalekites, and Moses had ordered. And Moses, Aaron, and Hur went to the roof, to the top of the hill. As long as Moses held up his hands, the Israelites were winning. But whenever he lowered his hands, the Amalekites were winning. So I don't know really what that looks like. Winning in a war, I guess it means like, okay, somebody's took a couple shots and a knife wound, and we're losing more blood than they're losing. And so I don't know if you've held up your hand. In school, I wasn't famous for holding up my hand. When the teacher asked a question, I kind of look down, don't make eye contact. But there's always those kids in class that are like this, oh, and and the teacher doesn't pick them for the 8th time in a row, and then what do? They go like this, right? Because their arms are getting heavy. So that's kind of like the picture I get from Moses, is he's on top of this hill, and he's doing what God wants. He's doing what God says, this is going to win the fight. And I can see on that hill, all the people that are fighting see Moses, and they see his hands raised from God, and they know that because he had his hands raised, the locusts came, the frogs came, we got freedom from Egypt. He parted the Red Sea when he raised his hands and had that staff. And they get confidence, and they know that it's not just Moses, it's God. And then in our strength, I don't know how long you can keep your hands up. No, I know. Like, I remember being in church services, and they're like, raise your hands toward each other. We're going to pray for these people. And I'm like, okay, 2 minutes. I'm like, okay, that doesn't really matter. I lose my spirituality. It's 2 minutes. And so you see this with Moses, where he lowers his hands, and now we're losing more blood than they do. And when Moses' hands grew tired, they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it. Aaron and Hur held up his hands, one on one side and the other on the other, so that his hands remained steady till sunset. So Joshua overcame the Amalekite army with the sword. I think that's amazing. Like, okay, so my spirituality is right about 2 minutes, but if I got Rob and Carrie holding up my hands, I don't know how long I have. How long do you have? I'll keep my hands up all day long. And we win the war that way, but I need you. I need you to be supporting me. I need you. It's not a very glorious job being under the armpits of Jon Ruby. I don't know, but under the armpits of Moses, they don't have antiperspirant in that day. And Aaron and Hur are under there holding up his hands so that the Israelites can see and win the war, win the battle. So can you do that battle alone? I got 2 minutes. What do you got? Some interesting observations. I see Moses' arms up in surrender, humility, for all to see. And he needed help. Sign of God's surrender. And I think it's an encouragement to those. It's like a testimony. If I have my weakness, like, hey, I'm not even in battle. I'm the leader. I should be the guy leading the forces, but here I am on a hill going, I'm so weak, I need Rob and Carrie hold my hands, hold my arms up. And it's just a sign of a testimony of weakness, and it encourages other people. And so an observation is, can we lead out of our weakness? Hey, I'm Jon Ruby, I'm not too cool. I got 2 minutes to win it. I got 2 minutes. That's it. But when I have these guys helping me out, businessman Mark Yarnell says, a leader is someone who demonstrates what's possible. I also saw that leaders don't do all the work. Like, he wasn't the one-man show. He wasn't, hey, I got this, guys. I'm going to take 10 of us and we're going to go down there and we're going to clean I got it. He didn't even enter the battle. He just had his hands raised. Some people might say, that Moses, he's not willing to get his hands dirty. He's scared to get hurt. He doesn't want to come down the hill with us. Ever heard that before as a leader? Leaders don't let everybody do all the work, though. A good leader, this is what I observed, listens to God. Lets others help. They don't have to be the center of attention. Hey, how many people did you kill? I'm competitive. Right? You see football players in NCAA, they put little stickers on their helmets to see how many hits you get. right? And it's like, if I'm in battle, I'm going to be like, hey, Isabel, how many did you get? Right? And doesn't have to be the center of attention. Instead of a leader saying, go do that, he says, let's go do this. And then just like that staff of God, let testimony encourage and remember you. And so that you remember what God has done. So as we need people, and that's my point, is that I need people. I need people to help me through this battle. I need people to even help me through this time of testing. And just pray for a miracle for God. I need help with that. I'm not even good at being alone. I don't like big crowds of people. Like if there's this many people, okay, well I know you all, but I don't like going. I get uncomfortable when there's this amount of people. It's like, okay, how do you talk to all those people? I get anxious. I just want to sit in the corner. I feel a lot more comfortable there. But I don't like to be by myself either. It's a predicament. So it's like if there's two of you, I'm great, and if there's food involved, I'm greater. It's awesome. So I need people, and I need to get my thoughts out, or else I get stuck in myself. And so look at 4 different types of relationships. One, interdependent. And so interdependent is really mutual dependency, depending on each other, helping each other. You look at wildlife. Maybe this is a bad example. But if you look at wildlife and you look at the whale and you look at the things that are clung to the whale, they both need each other. If the shark or the whale wasn't around for the food for the little, what are those guys called? What? Yeah, okay, there we go. Wow, pilot fish. They're interdependent on the thing that they're eating the stuff off of, and the big guy that's swimming around is dependent on them cleaning them off. Independent is kind of rejecting others and their aid and support. Independent looks like, like if you've had a little child and you're taking them to Walmart and you're in the parking lot, it's like, take my hand. That little child always wants to take your hand until a certain age. And it's like, no, don't touch me. That's my experience anyway. I've only had boys, so maybe it's different with girls. But they don't want to hold my hand anymore. And it hurts my feelings. But they want independence. They go, I got this. It's just a parking lot. I got this, Dad. It's like, don't touch me. Right? And that's independent. And then there's dependent. And that's really relying on someone or something else for aid and support. You look at dependent people in our society, and that's babies, that's elderly, that's the widows, not so much in our day and age, but the single moms. Those are the people that God really says for us to help because they're dependent on us. They need our help. And then there's codependent. It's a beautiful word for people. People hear that word, and there's 10 people in this room right now want to punch me just because I said codependent. But just hear me out. Codependent is a type of dysfunctional helping relationship. I wrote this one down. Is a type of dysfunctional helping relationship where one person supports or enables another person's addiction, poor mental health, immaturity, irresponsibility, or underachievement. Among the core characteristics of codependency, the most common theme is an excessive reliance on other people for approval and identity. Whew. That's a big word. There, maybe a little understanding. Those are the 4 different types of relationships: interdependent, independent, dependent, and codependent. God has actually designed us to be interdependent. He's actually designed us to need each other, to value each other, for you to help me hold up my hands. And then when it's your turn for me to help you hold up your hands. And we're all called to be leaders. That's the trick. Like, if you're getting sober, or if you just became a Christian, God's actually calling you to be a leader. Because he actually says, go heal the sick, take care of the widows and the elderly, make the lame walk, pray for miracles, and then go make. Oh, he doesn't say go be disciples. He says go make disciples. So are you making leaders that make leaders that make leaders? Or you just be like, whew, that was a close call. Thank you. And I got my one arm holder upper. You know, I only need one arm to win the battle. Are you just okay with, you know, getting back into the mainstream of things and getting back to work and making up time that you've lost? Or are you trying to develop yourself to develop others into leaders? Because we're all called to make disciples. What does that look like in your life? Can we be instrumental in helping people to the promised land, walking through the desert, praying for miracles, representing a God that's compassionate and loving? Can we be that kind of leader, a representative of God, taking other people to the promised land? Or do you just want to hang out with the people in the promised land? Because tell you the truth, that's way easier. Because we're all eating good. We all, remember the time when, remember the quail and the manna? That got tiring, eh? 40 years worth. Right? It's easier to hang out with the people in the promised land instead of being like, all right, see you guys. I got some people to drag with me, right? I got some people to pray for miracles, pray for water to come out of rocks. I got people that I'll probably need to tolerate and love and be dependent on. And for me to teach them to be dependent on me. No Christian can be a Lone Ranger. We won't make it on our own. We need each other to cling to Jesus. And so at Union City Church, I really value discipleship. I really value making leaders that make leaders. And so kind of what are some of the resources that we have to do that? Number one, we have a thing called Life Lab, and it runs every Monday for 5 months. And it's like the spiritual fitness, the spiritual training. Who's been to one in here? Good, we got a lot more people to sign up. Woo! All right, but a lot of us have taken it. And so it's kind of this spiritual training journey. And then once you've done that for 5 months and you've got rid of, you look at your heart as a corner store and you've had all this stuff jammed in the store for 35 years, 40 years, and you're looking at the Chef Boyardee going, that's from 1964. All right, let's get rid of that. You're taking all this inventory and you're getting rid of that stuff so that God can fill your shelves with that love and the compassion and that tolerance and the patience and the self-control. Right? And so Life Lab teaches you to do that process. We take you through that process. And the good news is you got somebody to go with you on that process. So if you've taken it, then you take somebody else through that process. You have one class a week. You have another little meeting after that class, and you talk about your answers and all the stuff that we do in that. And at the end of that 5 months, you know what I'm going to say? Hey, Isabel, do you want to be a pace setter for the next semester? And it's so cool because every semester, we've done 3 semesters now, and what was shocking to me was I thought the new people would be super excited, like the people that are sitting in class for the first time. No, they're scared. They don't really know what to expect. Their eyes are wide. It's like, I don't know these people. And then in the back row, we have the pace setters, and I think we have 8 of them. I don't know. And they're more excited. They're the guys that are excited. They're like, whoo, I'm a pace setter. This is awesome. Wow, I learned that again. Like, I totally forgot that stuff. And they're calling me about their PCs, and it's like, I got the best PCs. Mine are like fighting for their lives. This is amazing. I got to be a part of it. And now you got a leader that's helping lead somebody. And now you're a leader. Just like that. But be careful. Don't hit the rock twice. We know what happens. So that's Life Lab, and that's pace setting. That's a disciple that makes a disciple. And then what I'm investigating is, I'm not good at naming stuff, but a missional type group, a mission lab. And it's this experiment to see how do we do this bigger picture, because there's a lot of you that have influence in a lot of other people's lives. My friend Thomas, he's got influence over a ton of people. So do we want to bring him in here and go, okay, Thomas, let's do a Bible study together. Let's study the Bible and, us. We're already here. Why would I want that? Why would we? In my conference, when I went away last week in Quebec City, this guy talked about the salt shaker. And he said that we are the salt of life, and we only need a little bit of salt in the salt shaker. The rest of the salt needs to be out. And so many times we focus on building this salt shaker and growing it. So how do we intentionally change the world around us? How do we, as the church, get somebody like Thomas or Jess and go, okay, you have this group already and they're non-Christians and you're kind of like this community. How do we help bring intentionality to that and bring these people into the bigger picture of the gospel? So we're kind of playing with some ideas. With that, that's kind of like that mission lab. And what I wanted to introduce today is called Bible Lab. And this is a great way of just connecting together with 3 to 5 people, men and women, men or women. And it's just to be able to read the Bible together. And this isn't, Jon Ruby didn't make this up, but this is something that's been around the world. And so this is kind of like a discipleship group. This is getting Aaron and her to hold up your hands, and then you can do that to the people in your group. And it's only for a short commitment of whatever weeks, as many as you want to go, but minimum of 24 weeks. And basically what it is 24 texts in the Bible. So this brings intentionality to meeting once a week. So you read one of the texts, and it goes from the creation story to the gospel, from the Old Testament to the New Testament. And there's 24 texts, and you read one a week, and then you answer the same questions every week. In your own words, what's being said? What does it say about God, us, and or me? What is it asking me to believe, then do differently in my life? Who could I share this with? So you're meeting with 3 or 5 people intentionally, and you're reading a passage of the Bible, and you all answer those questions together. And you read through 25 texts, so it's very simple to do. And whether you're a new Christian or old Christian, you're working together in a group to go through the Bible and discuss it together. And to me, it's simple. There's no administration. If you want to do that, if you feel led to do that, I have the 25 texts and the questions. If you're somebody, even at the treatment center, just to get together, that's easy for you guys. Or if you have a couple people outside of this church that maybe have never read the Bible, you can just say, hey, I want to invite you into this to discuss the Bible. And we're just going to read a text a week, and we're going to ask these questions. Do you believe it? Is one of the questions. And they might say, no, I don't believe that. And it's just investigating in a small group of people. And then you can add to that and change groups, and those people can, after the 24 texts are read, then they can form their own group. So basically, I'm asking you to join us as we join others in joining Jesus. And I really believe that we can't do this alone. Maybe you're like me and have 2 minutes. Maybe you work out a little bit more. But how long do you have? 3 minutes? 5 minutes? But we need the Aaron and we need the her, under our arms. And then we need to be those people as well. Man, I went into overtime. I'm sorry. Vicky? I did. Nana's sleeping. I'm sorry. I apologize. I got drooling. Father, I just thank you for this time. I apologize that I went into lunchtime, but I just pray that there's an urgency to be able to ask for help, need help, open our eyes to the people that are around us. Open our eyes to the Aaron and the and give us the courage to ask for help. I just pray that you teach us how to need people properly, how to go to people, how to build relationships. And Father, I just thank you that you've created us to be interdependent. I just pray for everyone in here to be able to get involved in a life lab or a mission group or the Bible lab. I just pray that as we build our community, as we form our community, as we follow you, Jesus, that we just all get into this discipleship group and be a community that really needs each other. So I thank you for the opportunity to be able to share your word today. Give everybody a great week. Keep us safe. Keep those that are traveling safe, and just be with us this week. In Jesus' name, amen.